What is up everyone? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video, and if you haven't seen already, somehow we did it, 100,000 subscribers. Wait for it. Now you can see the balloons, look at this. But today we're going to be building a really awesome kind of RTX 3080 based system inside the new Corsair iCUE 5000X. I'm loving this electronic desk, by the way, as well. We've got loads of goodies, including the new Corsair 360mm Capellix radiator. We're going X570, we're going Ryzen 5000. All in all, you do not want to miss this. I'm going to run you through all the parts I selected and why, the build process step by step from start to finish before booting this machine up to see just how well it performs. But first, a quick word from today's video sponsor. Ebuyer are your one-stop shop for all your PC component needs here in the UK. Check out the UK links to all the components listed today at ebuyer.com in the description below, including their entire lineup of RTX 3080 graphics cards, just like this one. Their in-house brand AlphaSync also has a range of full 3080 systems that you can buy right now. Check them out at the link in the description below. As always, I'm going to kick things off by installing our CPU today into the motherboard alongside our RAM and SSD and those kind of components. You can go either for a Ryzen 5 or Ryzen 7, the 5600 or the 5800X are both great options today. This 6-core 12-thread Ryzen 5 chip is the better choice for gamers out there and does save you a little bit of cash. I'm going to be installing it today into the motherboard choice. This is the MSI X570 Gaming Edge Wi-Fi. It costs just a little bit more than the B550 options on the market, but you do actually get active cooling on the chipset, which should give us a bit more overclocking headroom alongside the slightly beefier VRMs today. And what's also quite good is that you do get Wi-Fi included out the box, so you haven't got to add any expansion cards in or anything like that. Now, in terms of the motherboard today, we don't need anything else from our box, but we are going to use it as kind of an anti-static workstation. Installing the CPU is super easy. Pull back and upwards this silver retention arm on the CPU socket, and then simply line the gold triangle on this CPU up with the corresponding triangle on the top left corner of that CPU socket on the motherboard itself. Drop the CPU in, you can give it a little bit of a wiggle and pop the arm back down. This is a zero insertion force socket, which means popping the arm up and down is literally as easy as that, just as kind of a demonstration. The next thing we're actually going to do then today is install the RAM, and this goes in our RAM DIMM slots on the motherboard. Specifically, this is Corsair's Vengeance RGB Pro. It's a pretty good value kit, and a 3600 MHz speed is going to help our CPU in the performance department today. Once again, installing the RAM is pretty simple. We're going to pull back the second and fourth clips on our RAM DIMM slots, just like so, and then align the notch on the RAM DIMM with the corresponding notch on the motherboard. The RAM is then going to slide pretty nicely into place, even pressure to both sides, and it will click in pretty easily, really. Repeat for as many RAM DIMMs as you've got, and we're all sorted. Next up then, it's time to install the SSD today. I've gone for the Seagate Firecuda 520. Not only is it a Gen 4 drive with blisteringly fast speeds, but it also includes Seagate's 3 years data recovery. So if this drive kind of dies, you can send it back to them within that 3-year period, and hopefully they're going to save your bacon, which is quite a nice touch. I've not really seen that before. To install the SSD though, we need to remove this heatsink, and for that, I think you guys know what we need. We need a teeny tiny screwdriver. Come on! I have been a busy man over Christmas, and the teeny tiny screwdriver has had an upgrade. Yes! Look at this, it's never been so quick to build a PC. Now, in all seriousness, this is a little bit overkill, and it's probably gonna like thread some screws, so like, be careful is all I'm saying. Now, in terms of installing the SSD, this is once again super duper simple. You just want to find this gold strip at the top of the drive and just find the little cutout. We're going to match this up with the corresponding cutout on our motherboard today, and then just slide the drive in a little something like that to the M.2 slot. And we're just going to take the little SSD standoff that comes included in the motherboard to just fasten that SSD drive nicely into place. The Firecuda 520 is now all nice and secure, and we can pop that heatsink back on. And with that, our motherboard assembly is now basically complete. I'm going to save the CPU cooler for a little bit later to make our lives that little bit easier. First though, we need to install it. Oh my goodness. Into the case today. This is the brand new Corsair iCUE 5000X RGB. And we need some scissors. Now, believe it or not, this is actually the bigger brother to the fairly newly released 4000X RGB, and you can find the video I did with that chassis in the cards up here. Oh my goodness. Now, this thing is a little bit of a big boy. It's slightly insane, if I'm being honest with you. Oh, now, this case is slightly insane, as you can probably tell. It's crammed with features, including the option to mount our radiator kind of like vertically. I don't know, on its like side on show, so we're going to do that today. It's got tempered glass on not one, not two, not three, but actually 4 individual sides. Which is a bit mad, really, isn't it? I mean, it's completely insane. It supports up to eATX motherboards, and you can see here it's actually got a radiator mounting point, which we're going to be using in just a second. First, though, let's install the motherboard. It's actually quite lightweight with nothing in it. We're going to install the motherboard into our case. Now, this motherboard has a rear I/O shield built in, so you've got nothing that you need to click in the back of the chassis. And with this case being set up for, let's face it, not mini ATX boards, it has pretty much, it has all the standoffs in the right place. It's just worth checking by finding each of the holes through your motherboard and matching these up to the corresponding black standoffs in any case. But as I say, this one is nice and ready to go. To install the motherboard, we're then just going to slide it into the chassis today, kind of poke that rear I/O shield through, and the raised center standoff, which is actually hidden behind this heatsink, is going to hold the motherboard at least temporarily into place. And you'll find this brown box in the back of the chassis, which comes included with basically all cases nowadays, which has all the screws and stuff you're going to need, amongst other things, to secure the motherboard into place. And you can do that a little something like so. With the motherboard installed, we next need to think about the radiator. I've got a 360mm cooler, which is going to go here, but currently this bit of the power supply shroud is in the way. Corsair do allow you to remove this with a thumb screw. It's another screw at the back of the case. Corsair do include this kind of like extra plastic add-on, which I'm guessing kind of slots in here. But first we obviously need to remove the cable cover to actually reveal the radiator mounting points. We'll get there in the end. Aha, there we go. So the power supply kind of cable cover has been removed, which in theory, look at that. That is, I've never seen that before. So basically what that's going to do is just make it so that this is not like dead ugly down in the bottom corner. Nice work, Corsair. I'm rating this case so far. Let's now grab that CPU cooler. I don't know where it's gone. Here it is, CPU cooler. This is also from Corsair. It's their H150i. Basically, it's a 360mm cooler. My maths today is gone. And it's in white, which is going to match our build perfectly. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh, that's hot.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Specifically, this model is actually one of their Capellix range, which has the new Capellix RGB technology. And from my kind of experience, it is the brightest RGB, I've ever seen inside of a PC, which some people are going to hate. Some people, like me, we like RGB here on the channel. Let's pop that out the way for a second. Inside the box, you also get not one, not two, but of course, 3 RGB fans. The instruction manual, which we're probably not going to need, but it's good to keep hold of. And then all your extra mounting hardware, including a bag. But oh no, the bag's opened itself in shipping, and that's just made my life really not fun. Oh. So because we're going to install the radiator with the fans at the front, we need to secure it in actually from the backside. That's going to be a much easier way of doing things. We're just going to slot the radiator into its provisional place, all lined up with the mounting points, and then just screw it down. And we can do that a little something like this. That's going to hold the radiator nicely into place and pave the way for us to screw the fans in on the front. Technically, you probably want them bringing air into the case at the front, but it will look better in like the wrong orientation. And before anyone says in the comments about these tubes being technically above the block and like the whole Gamers Nexus video, it doesn't matter. Like the distance between the CPU and the tubes in terms of height is so minimal, it's not going to cause an issue. And in case anyone kind of hadn't noticed, you can't exactly mount this radiator at the bottom because the tube simply won't reach the CPU, especially once we've got a graphics card installed. This cooler does actually come with the thermal paste pre-applied. It's got a little plastic cover, we don't need that. And it also has pre-installed these Intel mounting brackets, which once again, we're not using today because of course we've got a Ryzen CPU. Instead, we're going to be using these AMD brackets. They have kind of like a lip that goes upwards and they just pop onto our CPU cooler. And then what we're also going to do is use these kind of O-shaped brackets or square brackets to actually secure through the mounting plate of the cooler. And that's what's going to fasten on to the pre-installed mounting hardware around the CPU today. Look at that. The case is now like really starting to come together. I can see how this chassis would be great for a full all-in-one loop with a radiator at the top, but maybe we'll drop some RGB fans up there just to kind of like fill the case out just a little bit. For now though, I think it's about time we install the power supply. And to do this, we're going to just spin the case around to the back and actually remove this cable management door. That's going to allow us to just shove all the cables out of sight, out of mind, and keep things looking nice and tidy. Speaking of which, this is the power supply I've gone for. This is once again from Corsair. We've got a Corsair case, cooler and power supply trio today, much like the graphics card, which is from MSI and matches the motherboard. Now, this is the Corsair CX750F. It's a white unit, and finding a kind of a really good, reasonably priced white power supply is kind of rare these days. So nice one to Corsair for creating this 750 watt, super efficient, fully modular power supply. Now, in terms of the cables we actually need to plug in for this fully modular power supply, a couple of 8-pin CPU power connectors, or 4+4 pin if we're being super duper accurate, a dual 6+2 pin PCIe power connector for our graphics card, a 20+4 pin motherboard power cable to power up, of course, our motherboard, the biggest connector of all today, followed closely by a SATA power harness. That's going to power up any physical SSDs or hard drives, or more importantly, the RGB hub that comes included in the case and with the cooler today. There we go, that wasn't too difficult. Then just going to pull the case around, and the power supply is just going to slide into the back of the chassis and secure down in these four corners a little something like this. All that leaves us to really do then, before we go ahead and install the graphics card today, is actually just plug all those wires and connectors up. It first starts off with our CPU power cable, which goes to the top left of the motherboard, followed closely by the largest motherboard power connector, which goes to the right-hand side of our motherboard today, and then by all of our front panel cables. The first is our JFP1 connector for our power reset indicator, all the LEDs and buttons basically at the top of the case. These can be a bit fiddly, but the diagram on your screen now should help simplify the whole process. We've also got a USB 3 header to power our USB 3 ports on the top of the chassis today. This is a bit delicate and is notched, so will only go in one way. Finally then, we've also got our HD audio connectors. They go to the bottom. They go to the bottom left of the motherboard for HD audio, and that's basically similar to USB 2 as a connector, but with a different pin blocked out. So just be careful, and as with all of these, don't force them. You're better off just kind of reading the manual, starting again, taking it slow, and you're going to be good. Okay then, now that's all installed, we're next going to pop in the graphics card today. This is the MSI RTX 3080 Suprim X, because like Gaming X wasn't enough for MSI, it seems. This card is absolutely gorgeous. Now, I know a lot of people out there are desperately trying to get their hands on an RTX, well, an RTX anything, if we're being completely honest with you. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't know exactly when stock isn't going to come back. I've heard rumours that here in the UK, retailers are starting to finish off kind of fulfilling all the pre-orders. So hopefully that means the demand will kind of get a bit more bearable, right? But either way, this card is absolutely insane. It's got 3 huge fans, right? Pretty normal for a graphics card. A machined aluminium kind of frame, like that is all metal. Like the whole thing is metal. The back plate is like nothing you have ever seen. It's got like an accent line. This all lights up. It's RGB. And look at the thickness of it. Like this case does have a vertical GPU mount, but there is absolutely no way this graphics card is going to fit on that vertical GPU mount. It's also quite a heavy boy, and we'll see how that kind of works in the performance department. We are working on making our benchmarks even better than before. And new for today's video, I'm going to link a playlist down below where you can find all the raw benchmark files from this build. So if you want to see us just play Overwatch for 5 minutes on this card, or Battlefield or whatever, check out Benched by GeekaWhat, linked in the description. Make sure to get subscribed over there for all your kind of comprehensive gameplay analysis. In order to install the graphics card then, the final step really of today's build, we just need to unscrew the second and third PCIe slot covers. There we go, that worked, didn't it? The graphics card is gonna nicely slot into place. Oh, it just about fits with the fan. I hope this was planned, Corsair, and not, I guess it was planned, but like the graphics card only just fits. So do beware, if you've got a graphics card that's a bit of a thick boy, make sure you check all your clearances for those kind of radiator installations. You're then gonna use the same screws you remove the PCI brackets with to secure the graphics card nicely back down into place. With that being said though, I think we should probably boot this machine up. Let's see how good it looks when it's all powered up, and that can only mean one thing. Roll that montage.
We can be something. Are you ready for us? 'Cause I'm ready for you. Are you ready for us? We can be something. Are you ready for us? Oh, 'cause I'm ready for you, ready for you. Are you ready for us? We can be something new.
Okay then, now we've put this system together and seen just how good it looks when it's all powered up, let's take a dive and see exactly how it performs. I've tested over 15 of the latest AAA titles and I'm going to run through them game by game. If you'd like to see the full unedited benchmark clips, check those out in the playlist in the cards and in the description. First up though is Death Stranding. Here at 4K high settings with DLSS enabled and set to quality, it gives us 164, 149 and 136 frames per second respectively. The GTA 5 inbuilt benchmarking mode is next up. 4K high settings gives us 67, 62 and 54 frames per second, and you can check out my other builds in the GTA 5 benchmark mode to really easily compare and contrast. Next up then is Control, of course the title which does support RTX. First at 4K with DLSS set to 1440p, so Nvidia's AI tech rendered at 1440p and using AI to upscale to near enough a true 4K resolution gives us 81, 73 and 70 frames per second with of course ray tracing enabled. Drop the DLSS down to 960p but keep the core resolution at 4K, and here with RTX on high once again we're jumping up to 95, 84 and 80 frames per second. Not a bad effort. Next up then is Apex Legends. Set to 4K high settings, no ray tracing or DLSS available here, and you're looking 124, 118 and 106 FPS. Drop down to 1440p high settings and we're going a little bit further up to 159, 136 and 123 for those average 90 and 99th percentile results. As I say though, full unedited clips, so kind of 10 minutes of gameplay of each title can be found in the description below. Call of Duty's Warzone is next up today then. 4K high settings sees 95, 86 and 59 frames per second for those average 90 and 99th percentile results, and no ray tracing is supported in the free Battle Royale mode. I then tuned the resolution down to 1440p but kept the high settings, and here you see 153, 128 and 96 FPS, which is a really considerable increase. Call of Duty's new Black Ops Cold War is a harder game to run than Warzone, but nevertheless you can still get some great frame rates. 4K high settings in Cold War with DLSS and RTX both set to high gives you 59, 35 and 32 FPS, which are a little bit shaky. Tuned down to 1440p though, high settings, DLSS on, and here you're getting 168 frames per second, so basically a 100 frames per second increase, with similar increases in both the 90 and 99th percentile results. Next up today then is Overwatch. At 4K ultra settings, the game ran really well. 232 FPS on average is not a bad result, with 188 and 167 for the 90 and 99th percentile results, also stacking up very nicely. CSGO is the next game on my list today. I always pop it on here because people, they want to see how it performs. 4K high settings gives you 373 FPS on average. I don't think there's much more to say about that one. Moving on to Minecraft RTX next up. It's now out of beta, and here at 4K with DLSS enabled by default, you're looking 60, 57 and 54. Ray tracing reimagines the way that Minecraft really operates and looks and turns it, in my view, into a whole different game. If you're into mods and all that kind of stuff though, then ray tracing is not the one for you, but it's always good to see how Minecraft RTX stacks up, and as it kind of squeezes out and out of beta even more, then the frame rate should continue to climb. Doom Eternal is the next title we tested here at 4K Ultra Nightmare. What a name for a preset. I've said it before, say it again. That's just awesome. gives you 150, 138 and 129, which while it doesn't have any ray tracing or DLSS support, is a great test of overall rasterization, and the game looked great. Rainbow Six Siege is next today then. We tested first at 4K, very high settings, then at 1440p with the identical settings. First off, in the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode, we saw 242 FPS on average, with respectable 90 and 99th percentile results, esports level frame rates really, and then tuning down to 1440p, we once again saw some great numbers. 242 jumps to 307, 194 jumps to 245, and 174 for the 99th result gives you 295 frames per second. What a crazy increase. Watch Dogs Legions is next up then, first off with ray tracing enabled and DLSS turned on at 4K high settings, and then with ray tracing turned off. The RTX on result gave us nearly 70 frames per second for the average, with 65 and 63 for the 90 and 99th percentiles. Watch Dogs Legions without ray tracing at the identical settings does give you a comfortable performance increase, around 40 to 50 frames per second. 112 on average with a frame rate that never really dropped below 100 is really not too bad going. Next up then today is Cyberpunk, the final game on my list before we do jump into a little bit of Fortnite, because I know you guys love a bit of Fortnite. And here you're looking 68, 63 and 52 at 1440p high settings with both DLSS and RTX enabled. And then if we turn RTX off but keep DLSS on auto, once again at 1440p, it's going to jump to nearly 100 frames per second on average, and does boost the 99th percentile result well above 60. Cyberpunk is such a difficult game to run, and it doesn't need me to kind of reiterate how buggy it is. Hopefully it will continue to get better, but a 3080 is about the best card for Cyberpunk, at least at the moment. Finally then is Fortnite. We have tested a whole range of settings to make sure everyone is happy, ranging from ray tracing off at 1440p high all the way to competitive settings. 1440p high first off gives us 150, 135 and 120, so kind of still on the low end of esports frame rates, but not a bad effort at all. And then 1440p low with DLSS once again kept on, because that is going to maximize our frame rate, boosts us nicely over 200 frames per second with 189 and 173 for the 90 and 99th percentile results following closely behind. But James, what about 1080p competitive settings? Low basically across the board with our render distance set to far, not to epic, as that is going to kill your frame rate. And here you're looking 234 frames per second on average, with a frame rate that never really went below 200 frames per second. With that being said though, that pretty much wraps it up, not only for our pretty mammoth gaming benchmark list today, but for the whole video. If you did enjoy it, you know what to do. Give it a big old like rating, make sure you get subscribed. Thank you very much for watching though, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.